All right, class, settle down. Don't make me ask you again. Paul, hands to yourself. Allie, don't think I can't see what the two of you are up to back there, okay? Just remember, I have got eyes in the back of my head. Now, okay, where were we again? Anybody remember where we left off yesterday? No, 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 nobody?
Blueberry
Okay.
pie.
Well, Paul, thank you for interjecting.
Yeah.
We were talking about fearmongers, and I am your host, Clay McLeod Chapman. And oh my God, on this lovely Thanksgiving week, we have a wonderful, wonderful panel set up for you. We are tonight chatting all about the spooky, ooky middle grade horror novels that are out there on bookshelves as we speak. The authors of It Came from the Trees. We have Allie Russell, and I have a little secret. Next week, we have also Down Came the Spiders. Hello, Allie. How are you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me.
Not to confuse anybody, but we have two Allies. So from here on, it will be Allie R and Allie M. So that when I say we have the author of Broken Dolls, it is none other than Ally Malinenko. Allie M, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Well, keep the bar low, damn it. This is like we want to like keep things going. Paul, when you were fumbling for the Zoom link before you
Yes.
hopped on, we came up with an amazing concept that we want to pitch to you.
Okay.
Uh, Stop us if someone else has already done this because it seems like a wasted opportunity. But has anyone ever kind of created a scare metric for your work called the Tremblays?
No, people have messed around with punning Tremblay, Tremblator, Tremblor,
But
but yeah, not specifically an actual meter. Although I
oh
just said
my
Tremblay meter, didn't I? Yeah.
oh my gosh. Well then, author of another and the kind of the metric of the Tremblays, we have none other than Paul Tremblay with us tonight. How's it going?
Hi, I'm not Allie or Allie.
We can still call you Paul T if you
Yeah.
want, just for consistency's sake. Guys, I really want to appreciate. I really want to share my appreciation on this Thanksgiving week, because you're taking time out of family, friends, turkeys, blueberry pies to be here to chat about your spooky books, specifically written for an age where I I'm always kind of like curious about the the people kind of on the other side of these books and how to get to them. Kind of right out of the gates, my first question for you all, and I'll start with Ali R. I want to kind of discuss your kind of first forbidden fruit. Like, do you remember, can you remember like that first book that was spooky, scary. Like it was like, maybe I shouldn't be reading this. It was right there on the shelf, and you kind of reached for it, you plucked it, and you were changed forever.
Uh, yes, and yeah, I do. I used to steal my sister's Fear Street books. So I have three siblings, and my oldest sister, she was a big reader when she was in high school, and she had all the Christopher Pike, all the Point Horror, all the Fear Streets, and I wasn't allowed in her room. So I used to sneak in there and steal books occasionally. So I remember Christopher Pike's Monster being one of the first ones that felt a little bit like, oh, I'm not supposed to be reading this. But beyond that, we have to, everybody talks about Stephen King. And so we were all, I think, reading Stephen King at that age. And don't yell at me for this, but my first Stephen King was Storm of the Century. Like that was like the first book that like I
Hmm.
got. And that was the one where I was like, oh man, if my parents only knew. But I kept reading it and it was such a blast.
I think there's some like Stephen King's ears are probably burning right now, and it only happens but once a century, and it's because that's a deep cut. I'm impressed. But I want to go back to Christopher Pike. Like that's amazing that that there was kind of a certain kind of Indiana Jonesness of it, like you had to actually kind of sneak in and kind of infiltrate your older sister's room. Did she ever catch on? Like, did she know that, like, hey, one of my Christopher Pike books is missing?
I don't I don't know if she actually cared or if it was just me being like a middle child and terrified of my older sibling, where
Hmm.
like she probably didn't care and I probably could have asked, but then if I had asked and she said no, then I would have known that I wasn't supposed to take her books. So it was easier just to sneak in and get them.
Amazing. That's amazing. But was it then Stephen King that kind of led to the like epiphany of like, ooh, I want to live here. I want to read more of this.
Yeah, I think so. As a large part of it though is like that's just how my family is. Like the thing in our house growing up anyway was like how many people can you scare in a day? Whether that's like hopping out of a closet or like all of us like sitting down. Like we watch scary movies every Friday and Saturday night.
Oh
Since I
my
was like
God.
4 or 5, like that's just my household. But yeah, I've always we always did Halloween really big. So it's just
This is
life.
your life. This is who you are. It is like in your this is not nature nurture. This is just like genetic code.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, pretty much.
do you remember what the first film was? Like, or like one of the first?
Still, oh no, Silver Bullet,
Oh
also
my God.
Stephen King. So
There you go. There you go. Did you circle back to Cycle of the Werewolf? Like, was that ever something that you
yeah,
read?
I've read it. I've read it a few times actually. I really like it, and I wish they would like redo the movie for newer audience. That's a Stephen King remake I would like to see.
Yeah.
But I read the book probably sometime after college. I didn't know that it was a novella of his, but yeah, I did read it.
Oh my God. I want to have Thanksgiving at your house because I want to see how anyone survives. I like what are the kind of scares that happen at the Thanksgiving dinner table? Like someone's gonna pull out a knife and accidentally carve their arm off as opposed to the turkey leg, right?
Well, my mom's trying to make us watch a rom-com this year, so I feel like that's the horror. Nothing against rom-com, it's just not my genre. So we'll see. We'll see what happens this Thanksgiving.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it. But what I'm hearing is older siblings are a great gateway for spooky books.
Absolutely.
Paul T,
Mm.
I'm curious if you can kind of go back and find that kind of first book that you read that you were like, am I too old, too young for this? Is this like is this appropriate?
Well, I stole, I guess technically I could still bring it back, but the only time I've stolen a library book uh, was The Haunting of Hill House. I still have it. I wish the story was better that I was like 8 years old or 10 years old. But unfortunately, I did this in my mid 20s, and the library is the school that I still currently work at. Uh, because when I was a kid, I wasn't like a huge reader. Like I read what was assigned to me at school, but I mean, the closest I came because my parents had like a couple of bookshelves. My dad was a big science fiction writer. My mom sort of read everything, and I liked looking at the spines. Like it was there forever. And I was a child of 80s cable television. So for me, it was just watching, the trash that was on HBO, the same movies over and over again. But when I was 18, I graduated high school and had back surgery, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be stuck in the house all summer. I'm finally going to read it that I've been staring at for years. And when I read the first chapter, just said nope and threw it across the room because I was too scared because I was going to be in the house by myself most of the summer. And we kept like a lot of we used to get like food deliveries and we kept it in the basement, our really gnarly, dark, scary basements. Like there's no way I'm walking into the basement.
Wait, you kept the copy of it in the basement?
No, no, like where we kept like cereal and food.
Oh,
Like if I needed to go to the cellar to get food, I would just see, I would be thinking about Pennywise and,
oh,
the George opening scene.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we need to go back to the library. What there's a mea culpa here. Like we need to
Yeah.
i- what was this like which library was this?
Oh, it's at the school that I teach at. I mean, it's a really small library, and I was like, oh, there's no way they're not gonna
Wait,
miss
wait,
this
wait.
book. Yeah.
It's the school that you currently teach at or the school that you taught at back then?
The school I currently teach at. Because I've been at one school the whole time. Yeah.
Wait, so you started teaching there in your early to mid 20s?
Yes. How old was I? Like 24-ish?
I'm not gonna, I mean, you could put a date to it if you want, but like,
Yeah.
how many years have you been teaching there?
Uh, this 30. This is my 30th.
Oh my lordy
I know. I
Lord.
should have lied and said I started teaching when I was 12. I was the Doogie Howser of math, but unfortunately,
So
that's not how
wait,
time works.
okay. So first few years you're at this school, you're
Yeah.
teaching, you've kind of made your way, and then you're in the library and you're like just down the aisle and you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna pick this book." And was was the decision then and there like I am taking this, or was it like I just you checked it out and then forgot to
Oh, there was no
that
checking out. Like, and that was part of it. It's like, I'm not going to go through the rigmarole of checking something out. And I teach at a Catholic boys' school, by the way.
oh my God.
Um, yeah.
Oh,
So it's like, yeah, I'm not going to have Father Paris check me out. That sounds like a pain in the ass. So I'm just I'll bring the book back later. But like, I wrote all sorts of like notes in the book. And yeah, actually, most days I have it within reach. I wonder
oh
where it
my
is.
God,
But
you
yeah.
still have the copy.
Oh, yeah.
They are watching this right now. Like
They could be.
they are gonna
Yeah.
revoke like blueberry pie privileges. Like this is
No, they
you're
can't
not getting a pie next
take my
Thanksgiving.
blueberry pie out of my dead cold hand. Along with the copy of The Haunting of Hill House. Yeah.
So I mean, I have to ask, like, are you ever inclined to return it, or is it just like no, the statute of limitations
No, like
is
no,
hit, like
yeah.
this
The
is mine.
library's gone through like they've culled books and added books, so I don't think anyone misses that copy.
Do they have another copy there? Like, is there like
Oh,
a
I
cop?
doubt it.
Oh my God,
It's a
Paul,
very small. It's a very small
oh,
library.
you have to donate a copy. Like, you have to like pay it forward and like give, like, just put like a copy back. If it's not your copy,
Yeah, I got to put my books in the library before I do that.
someone like some, I'm not gonna let this go. Like, some kid is like, some student has been like, I want to read. I want to read this book. And like whoever the
Yeah,
librarian is, like Father Ted is like saying, like, oh, we have this one copy of Haunting of Hill House, and like they're like, but we can't find it. It's gone. It's missing, and it's
yeah.
been for decades now on in your office.
It's not even like a real library anymore, honestly. We don't even have like a librarian. It's just like where the seniors hang out.
This panel is over.
I know,
It's
I know. It's
done.
totally derailed. Sorry.
Delinquency. So okay, so you read that book, and it triggered something. Like this was the kind of the doorway opening.
No, the doorway was open at that point, but it kept like swinging it open further. I was just trying to come up with a cool story because, unlike I'm sure both Allies read tons of scary books when they were kids, and I did not. I watched a lot of scary movies though.
Yeah, yeah. Allie M, what book did you steal from the library?
So listen, I just need Paul to know as a librarian, we have a whisper network. So,
I know.
you could
I
be in
should
big
not have
trouble
admitted
right
this at
now. I'm
all.
just
Yeah.
You're
saying, we know each other.
you're gonna burn it down. Oh my God.
Um, so okay, all right, what I would say and what the truth is are two different things. So I would say the first like scary book would have been Alvin Schwartz's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Um, but what it really was much like Allie, me sneaking into my older sister's room and reading Pet Cemetery like 2 pages at a time before she caught me in her room and memorizing the page that I had left off of last time and making sure, more importantly, that my mother didn't catch me in the room because that would have been worse.
That's amazing. But so you would, I mean, you would have to kind of do it piecemeal. Like you
Oh
would
yeah, yeah.
sneak in.
Well, it was like, okay, Jennifer, it's after dinner. Jennifer's my oldest sister. So Jennifer is on dishes. So that means I've got about 10 minutes in her room with no one noticing, and I can read like a page and a half, and then I have to memorize where I left off last. Because she was such an avid horror reader, she would have noticed if the bookmark had moved or if
Oh
anything had
my
been
God.
dog-eared.
So
So
you
yes.
like like the page numbers would be in your head for 24
Yep.
hours. You would come
Yep.
back,
I would
read.
also keep them. I had like a little piece of paper that I kept in my little desk drawer, and I would code the name of the book and the page I left off on.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
And I have to tell you, at this point, now that I am a published horror author, she is very, probably too proud of the fact that I went in there.
Darn
and
tootin'.
read her Stephen King books on the fly.
She gets bragging rights, right? She's like, yeah, that
I
was
mean,
me. I did that.
she
I
brags.
was, yeah,
She
yeah.
definitely brags. Yep,
Um,
for sure.
that had to take you 5 years to read
Oh, it
that
took
book.
forever. It took forever. It took
I mean,
absolutely forever.
I know it's
Yeah.
not the chunkiest of Stephen
It's
King
not,
books, but
but
that's like,
you read a book like just a couple pages. But also, I have to tell you, I was also like a scaredy cat, which is why my mother would have killed me if she knew I was doing this. So I
mhm,
think that was the only pace I could have gone on. I had to like slow walk into the pool of horror.
mhm.
I couldn't just straight dive off the board and experience that. So it worked for me. It did.
I
But it
don't know.
allowed me to then go to the library and be like, Mom, I want to check out this Alvin Schwartz book. And it's got scary stories and scary pictures, but I'll be fine. She was like, okay, but if you have a nightmare, it's going back. And I was like, no, we'll save that for my sleepover when I see Freddy Krueger for the first time. And I can't sleep for days on end.
Um, so I want to ask all of you, this idea of kind of writing for a younger readership. You know, I was kind of noodling around, and if Google is to be trusted, uh, middle grade has actually been around since the 60s. Like the term, like this kind of notion of this kind of target readership, which I actually found kind of interesting because I was under the assumption that middle grade YA these kind of designations didn't necessarily exist until someone like Barnes and Noble or Borders said we need to put these books on different shelves. But in terms of middle grade, in terms of writing for ages 8 to 12, that feels very broad in my mind. Like thinking of like, on one, young to old, like there's like 8 to 12 is like that's a very wide berth. And I guess I'm curious, um, how much are you kind of in tune or kind of aware of the age that you're writing for, like the specific age? Like, is it something that like as you're kind of embarking upon these stories, you're saying like, I'm writing for a 10-year-old, or I'm writing for some amorphous young youth shape that I'm not kind of aware of. Yeah, Aliar, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, I think I'm very aware of it. I just did an event on Saturday and I talked about this a lot where I am very aware of my childhood and how hard childhood was for me simply because I was like such an anxious kid, like over everything. Like my stomach was constantly hurting. Like I was just afraid of everything. And so I think about those emotions and feelings a lot because it wasn't until I was older that I realized, like, oh, that's not like normal. Your stomach's not supposed to hurt, with every little task that you have to do, everything that makes you afraid or nervous. Like that's not a lot of kids, a lot of other kids don't feel that way, like they're breaking rules, they're doing whatever they're being kids, so I think about that time of my life a lot. And so when I'm writing, like those are when I'm writing for that age range, those are the feelings and emotions that come out. So I feel like I am very aware that like I'm writing for 10-year-old Allie R,
Hmm.
and what would have scared her at that time and how she would have felt about, a particular situation. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Um, Allie M, I mean, I feel as if, and this is for everyone, but I want to start with you, where like the topics that all three of your books kind of explore, focus on. I mean, these are heavy topics. I mean, we're speaking about grief, we're speaking about kind of the loss of family members, the loss of friends, anxiety. Um, I mean, this is heavy stuff, and I'm wondering about like, what Allie's kind of speaking of, Allie R speaking of like this idea of like writing for the kind of the 10-year-old, the 12-year-old Allie. Is this the things that you're writing about? Would this be something that you would have wanted as a child yourself, as a young reader?
I think so. But I don't feel like I come to storytelling in that way. I think for me it's that I find horror to be an incredibly great vehicle to talk about really hard subjects. And so I think that it's very, I think that it's hard to talk to kids about death. I think it's hard to talk to kids about grief, but those are the things that they experience in their life. And I think that if I can create a vehicle by which those conversations can happen in any form, I feel like that is why I write, is to give kids an avenue into the things that maybe they're too scared to talk about, but maybe their parents are too scared to talk about. And I think that books are just a really great way to do that. Because you can talk about the story instead of maybe talking about, and then eventually it spins around to how you're feeling. Um, and it's not like I've purposely gone out of my way to be like, oh, I'm going to write about illness and I'm going to write about grief. These things just happen. But I just think that horror is a great vehicle for that. And I'm a big believer in the idea of horror with heart. And that is how I come to all my stories. Like, what are we really talking about? Or what are we really afraid to talk about? And that's where, I find the fear aspect, because with something like Broken Dolls, because Kay can't talk about losing her grandfather, her only option is to try and save her sister. So that, she has no choice but in order to save her sister to talk about how she feels. And I think that horror is just a really, really powerful vehicle for that. And I think it's a middle grade, it's true. And I think it's an adult horror, it's true. I mean, there are many adult horror books that I've read where I was like, oh, that's what we're really talking about. That's what's at the core of this. It's not just about great jump scares. I mean, I love a good scare. Absolutely. Keep me up at night, please. But, you know, it's when you get to the heart of the story. And I just think that, also a lot of middle grade, and a lot of it's contemporary middle grade, and it's very good. And a lot of sad stories are in there. I have friends who have written amazing contemporary middle grade that is literally about best friends dying, you know, um, but I don't know how to tell that story. I know how to tell a story of what grief means when you're trying to save your sister, and the only way to do it is to be honest about how you feel.
Yeah.
So,
Paul, I'm curious if this book, if another was always kind of the plan was to write this for a younger audience, or was this an idea that had been kind of ruminating, kind of in the same way or the same vein as a lot of your adult fiction, or was it like, no, this has to be for a younger readership?
Um, when I had the first sort of image that stuck with me, and this was during the 1 year I took off from teaching, a year sabbatical, and I'd finished my book horror movie early, so now I had, I had a stretch of time. I was like, oh, what am I going to work on? And that sort of coincided with me having this image of a lonely boy answering the doorbell to find like a strange old man with a burlap sack, and inside is his quote unquote friend, and it's this weird mannequin clay sort of boy. And I was like, oh, that's a really weird thing. But I thought it was really interesting, and it wasn't like I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to write a middle grade novel, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I say that with all the love in my heart. Uh, and honestly, sometimes I just try to follow like my instincts, or what where my interests lie, I should say. Like I was really interested in this image and where I could go with it, and I figured I would just write it and let my agent figure out what to do with it. Because I'm very sort of privileged and lucky to be in a position where I've had some books do well, so I thought I could mess around with something different. But so even though like when I started writing, I was like, I don't know if this is middle grade or not, but it features a sixth grade character, so maybe it is. Um, but honestly, I didn't approach the writing any differently than I do with my adult novels. Um, once I have a image that really sort of I'm obsessed with, and I try to dig into the character and try to to go with the story, go where the story takes me. The one thing I was surprised about, like I was not anticipating that the story would become about become a story that I didn't know I needed to write. Just the story that, what it was like being a teacher and a parent, and from my point of view, like watching students during the teeth of the pandemic, the first 2 years.
Mhm.
And so I mean that's you can't have the book without that part of it. So I mean that part was a surprise to me. So I was very happy to have written it. But ultimately, when I turned it over to my agent, I was like, I think this is middle grade. I don't know. If it's not, we'll just go adult, I guess. But um, and if it is, it's because I just sort of trusted Casey, the sixth grade character. And the other part of it is, I guess, I trusted my 30 years of teaching. Just, I teach at a 7th through 12th school, so I do get, I used to coach in the middle school. So even though I tend to teach mostly the high school students, I've been around and have taught middle schoolers for a long, or coached them for a long time, had my own two kids. Anyway, it's a long rambling answer to say, yeah, I just guessed that it might be middle grade.
Um, I have to ask, forgive me, but like at any point was there anyone who said, Paul's writing for little like young readers like that? Is that allowed? Like was there ever the moment of like, huh, that's a that's a line that Paul's gonna cross?
No, most people seem like, oh, that's cool. I mean, the funny part, I don't know, Allie, both Allies might laugh at this. I have to admit, like when I got to the end, I was like, oh, Allie, I know Allie M's books, and I know a few others, and like Chuck Wendig is putting it out. It's like, oh, it seems like middle grade horror is doing great and awesome. So I was surprised when my agent and even the publishers, editors I talked to was like, no, middle grade's bad. No, no one's selling any books. I'm like, what? So I mean, that was like the only weird sort of part of that. But everyone else seemed pretty enthusiastic about the whole idea. I mean, Chuck Wendig had the funniest response to the book. He read an early copy. He said, "Paul, this is really scary." I'm like, they'll be fine. The kids will be fine.
It'll be
I mean, I feel like I could say this about all three of your books. These are genuinely terrifying books. And I want to posit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but adults in writing adult horror or adult like the things that adults get away with within their adult spooky books, it it can lean into the garish, the grotesque, the violent, the gore, the things that kind of end up being extraneous to maybe the story, extraneous to the things that you're writing. I feel as if one can say by necessity, you're not allowed to write things that are too violent or too overtly grotesque or too gory. And therefore there is this notion of like it's in the restraint or the withholding, whatever Mad Lib word you want to kind of place there, but it's in that kind of like tension of what you can't show, that you're building up a sense of suspense, a sense of dread. Um, Ali R, I'm gonna call you out because I feel like there's this beautiful one-two punch of these two chapters that are back to back in It Came from the Trees, where there's one chapter where it takes place at a camp. There's like, these girls are kind of like sharing ghost stories, like a particular ghost story is being regaled. And in the next chapter, one of the girls wakes up and has to like go to the bathroom, and it's just like no, like just what is happening outside the tent is just so terrifying, and it's just such a like it's just queued up so perfectly that I I don't know, like my Blair Witch vibes were just like singing, and I don't know, like am I wrong, Aliar? Like, is it like if you could have a chainsaw kind of like blazing, would you?
Um, I I don't know how to answer if I have a chainsaw blazing, but it's definitely I I'm not trying to like keep kids up at night. Um, but I'm also conscious of the fact that there are kids out there who are watching stuff like Dahmer documentaries, because they're saying, oh, we can't find anything that is like scary enough. So I'm trying to find that balance. And again, like I know one of the things about childhood is like you have this like sense of immortality, like nothing can touch you or hurt you. Some kids do. Not all kids, experience that. But for other kids, like you don't really think about like your own death or anything like that. And we don't want kids to think about that kind of thing. So I think it was like a tough line to walk with It Came from the Trees and writing about that, a character who's gone missing and then these other characters out in the woods who are afraid of this like thing that is stalking them. And then also, bones are being found in the woods, like because you're out in that setting. So I think it was like tough. I don't know that I would have chainsaws on fire because I'm much more into like the slow, like creeping kind of dread. So I actually really appreciate that you said that, about those two chapters. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess you could have that sort of thing, but it's all about how you handle it within the story.
Yeah. You bring up a really interesting point, and I want to ask, with younger readers, do you find yourself ever competing with Friday the 13th or Halloween's, or like the kind of like, oh, I've watched it already. Like I know, like,
Huh?
like that kind of like jaded, and we're talking about, we're still
It's
talking middle grade.
Terrifier.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Oh God, Terrifier.
it's
Yeah.
Terrifier. I have gotten asked that at least a couple times at events, like, "Oh, do you watch Terrifier?" And I'm like, "No," and I don't know that you should either. But yeah, like that, it's very much a thing, and it's not again, it's not all kids. Like every kid's threshold for horror is different.
Yeah.
Some kids grew up like I did, surrounded by it all the time, and then there are other kids, who um, they know their own boundaries and like they want to approach it in like a safer way. But like, yeah, no, for the ones who want the horror, like
Yeah.
they're watching Dahmer, like they're watching some really like scary stuff, and
Yeah.
I didn't think so. Silver Bullet was like not that scary to me. It's like it was scary, but like not like, slasher level scary, I
Yeah.
guess.
Says the author whose whole family sat around the TV watching terrifying movies at age 4. Um, what you should read is this book called Broken Dolls, because there is this scene. There are a lot of scenes. I don't think this is a spoiler. There are a lot of dolls in this book, but there's one particular scene that I want to kind of shine a light on, where there's a doll. Maybe there's a few dolls, but there's like they're over here, and from the corner of my eye I can see them, and then I turn, and then the second I turn back they're a little bit closer, and if I look away and I look back they're even closer, and they're just like, it's if I close my eyes and I imagine they're not there and I open them again, oh my God, they're even closer. And Allie M, I feel as if that chapter, that scene is such a kind of like sustained like cello note of just like high pitched kind of intensity that just, you really milk it. And like I'm reading it, and I mean this couldn't have been more than like maybe a page or two, maybe two, three at an absolute maximum. It goes like as far as like page real estate goes versus like tension, it you really milk it. Like you get a lot out of it. And if if this was the jump scare moment of like, I'm going to open the closet door and out comes the doll, like it would feel different. But I feel as if you've used kind of this level of like, well, I can't rip my face off, or I can't like hack someone's arm off, and therefore what can you do? Well, you can build up suspense, you can build up dread. And Broken Dolls is nothing but dread as far as I'm concerned. um so how'd you do that?
Great question. I don't know. Um, no, I mean, I I think I think a lot of people are like, oh, you have to tone everything down for kids. You have to tone it down for kids. And I'm like, to a degree you do, but It's funny when my first book came out, I had a scene that took place in the bedroom, and my editor, who's the same editor I've had for all of my middle grade books, and my editor was like, "No, no, no, we can't. Bedroom's a safe space." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I wrote Broken Dolls, and I put that scene you're talking about in a bedroom, and she didn't blink an eye, and I was like, "Not so safe anymore." Okay, you know. But I mean, I think Dread is more interesting than someone ripping their face off. I mean, I think building tension. I mean, I love stuff like that in movies because the visual aspect of it is amazing. But you don't, depending on how your imagination works, you don't have the same experience all the time when you're reading a book. So I think that building dread for me is kind of like one of the key things that I try to do. And I'm very, very tuned in to who 12-year-old Ally was, and what excited and scared her in equal measure. And that is the minefield that I try to walk, you know.
Mm.
And I think, scenes like that keep the pages getting turned. And, an adult reader will give you lots of room for them to get bored. A kid will give you two paragraphs before they drop your book on the floor and walk away. So to keep that level up, I think is one of the things that, whenever someone's like, "Oh, when are you going to write a real book?" And I'm like, "You try and write a book that keeps a kid entertained for 200 pages or whatever, like, please, I ask you, because they have to reach the end of the chapter and want to read the next chapter. They have to read the end of the paragraph and want to read the next paragraph. Like, it's line by line by line. You have to hook them and keep them until the end. And Dread's really good at doing that because you don't know what's going to happen next, which is why you keep turning the pages.
I don't know about you guys, but I think Ally M just dropped the gauntlet on all of us authors. Can you pass the 12-year-old read test? Like, can you
I mean,
can you make it 2 pages before they're like, "Pff, Peter Straub, whatever."
it's look. I keep that in the forefront of my mind. The two things that I keep in the forefront of my mind is: are they going to want to read the next line? Would 12-year-old Allie read the next line?
Mhm.
And like, are kids today going to care about what happens next? And I don't have children, so I'm really winging this. By all means, and that's why I spent a lot of time, really thinking about what mattered to me when I was that age, which are kind of the same things that matter now. Like, tell me a good story. Like, that's really all I want.
Yeah. I love this idea. Both Allies have kind of mentioned like writing for their 12-year-old self, their 10-year-old self. Like what is the thing that I wanted to read at that age and then kind of providing that. Um so Paul, what did what did 12-year-old Paul want?
He wanted to steal more books. Um, yeah, no, I mean, whether it's this book or my adult books, the only reader I keep in mind is myself because I couldn't possibly deal with the pressure of writing for some other sentient being. And the hope is always that there are other weirdos like me that want to read the book. And in this case, younger weirdos. Thank you, younger weirdos. Uh, no, seriously, like I can't. I know plenty of writers who can think about the audience and write toward an imagined audience, and I just couldn't imagine doing that.
Yeah.
I just try to make everything serve the story. It's funny. I was thinking about when your first question to Allie about the chainsaw part of it. Um, one of the cool things that lined up for another was, hey, here, and it wasn't like, oh, I dialed back any violence because it was middle grade. It was just the story that I was telling didn't necessitate the use of violence.
Yeah.
It's a riff on a body snatcher kind of story. Um, and I don't know. Part of the reason why I was also excited about that story is because I haven't, like, it's hard for me to think of, certainly not the novel length, but it's hard to write a horror story where the threat of death isn't like sort of a part of the horror, right?
Yeah.
Uh, this is something different to be afraid of, and I found that to be a really cool challenge.
But I mean with another, it's amazing because I read it and I was having the kind of don't go up there kind of moment almost chapter for chapter where it's like you're basically watching someone lose their autonomy, someone kind of lose their identity, something like Casey is in essence disappearing before our very eyes.
Yeah.
And it's so incremental, it's so gradual that for the reader, it's easy to be like, wake up, like
Yeah.
leave, like run away, go, go, go. But what you've created is this kind of almost like a sinkhole um, into this kind of descent into you know whatever how you say body snatcher, and that I find that really interesting um, because it's almost like an internal snatch. I
Mm.
don't know, like were you kind of like cognizant of the kind of the biology, the genealogy, like how this was working for Casey?
No, I definitely didn't go too deep into like the clay slash whatever, without getting too spoilery. Whatever was made of Moral's body, for
Mhm.
adults, Moral is definitely a hint. Morel, I don't know the correct pronunciation. We'll go with either one. Um, yeah, I mean, this is my of my longer works. This is clearly it's certainly the most overtly supernatural, or it's not an ambiguous thing. And again, it wasn't like, oh, I'm writing for kids, I can't write something that's ambiguous. I think in a lot of ways, kids can handle ambiguity way better than adults can. Um, it just happened to be the story didn't necessitate its use. So yeah, I didn't want to get too bogged down in sort of, the rules of how transformation was happening, and just really focus on, Casey's experience, and try to root that as realistically as possible. If this was happening, this is how he would feel. This is how he would react. The horror of what's also happening to his parents. Yeah, it's all quite upsetting.
Yeah, but again, like it's kind of rooted in Casey's kind of personal experiences of like anxiety and kind of there's like a specific event of something that kind of happened to
Right.
him prior to the story starting that kind of lays down a certain kind of emotional foundation for what's to come. And was was that kind of a linchpin, like was that there from the get-go, like was that a later discovery?
Slightly later, but fairly early on, something similar had happened in my school, not quite the same, but basically it was all like a logic thought experiment. It was like, why would Casey and his parents accept like this kid and the Clay kid into the house? Not the Clay McLeod Chapman kid, but the Clay kid. We're clay mongering now.
I asked that question, like, why does
Yeah.
anybody let me in their house?
Especially, why would Casey feel so alone and isolated? And, to me, I was like, oh, this is taking place during, a couple, the early years of the pandemic. I actually had to fight with that a little bit to keep that
Really?
initially. When we brought it to the publisher that ended up buying it, they were like, hey, sales love this, but they want you to lose the pandemic.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. It's like, that's the theme, it's part and parcel of the book. I'm not, it's like, no.
Yeah.
I wish more authors knew they could say no. I mean, maybe it's in some ways easy for me to say, but I had a debut author remind me of that a year ago. I won't say her name so she doesn't get in trouble. But, she also used to work in publishing, but like, her first novel, they wanted to change the title. She said no. They wanted, all these different things. And I don't know, it's just a good reminder that because we all, get the fears like, oh, if we say no, they're not going to put a push behind it. They're not going to do this. I'm like, no, like you can, as long as you're right, just don't be no, say no because you're a pain in the ass. Say no because, this is the right thing for the book. But anyway,
Yeah. Aliar, Paul's talking, like in another, there's this kind of notion of, anxiety or kind of like the kind of loneliness that comes with feeling like you're kind of isolated from others within your peer group. What I found really compelling about It Came from the Trees is here you have a character who is like nobody will listen to her. Nobody believes her. Nobody she is adamant and is convinced that this is, you know, not to give anything away, but she knows what happened to her best friend, and nobody believes her. And like that's really scary. That's genuinely terrifying. Like that's a scary vibe. And I guess like I'm just curious, like was that kind of a ripple that enriched the book as you wrote it, or was that like that theme was there from the get-go?
I think that theme was there from the get-go. One of the things that I tried to do with that book was show specifically, you talked about like, well, Allie, M, and I are writing books for like the younger versions of ourselves that we wanted to see. And so for me, one of those things that I wanted to see was representation because I didn't get to read a lot of books that had, Black or Puerto Rican characters, main characters in them. And so one of the things that like I feel like I dealt with as a kid is, or I recognized as a kid, is when I was in a situation where the adult wasn't going to look out for me.
Hmm.
Maybe like not quite the way that they would have looked out for like their own kids or other kids in the group. And that can be really scary. Like that can make you feel kind of isolated. So yeah, it was definitely a theme that like I knew I wanted to include in the book and carry throughout in various ways.
Yeah. Um, I, God, I love these books, guys. Like I know I'm not the target age range. I'm 200 years old now and feel way out of my depth. But like, I don't know. Like it's fun to come to a book that maybe this is the reverse forbidden fruit, where like someone's saying like, no, 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 Clay, you have to go look at these books over there. But I'm like, but I want to read the middle grade books. Um, which is why I want to ask about kind of gatekeepers. There's like, how do you find your readers? Like, how do you reach kids? Because from what I understand, we have to talk to parents, we have to talk to librarians, we have to talk to teachers. Like there's an added layer to the kind of process of like, here, do you want to read this or can I read this? And I guess, you know, it's a very broad, open-ended question, forgive me. But I'm just curious, like how do you find your readership kind of on the other side of that extra added layer? Allie M, I'm curious. Like, I know we've actually even talked about it a little bit. And you're a librarian,
Yeah,
so like, how
I
do you
am.
talk to you to get you to give books to your readers?
So I do think that one of the hardest parts of writing middle grade is not having direct access to your own audience. And yeah, school visits are definitely something you can do, but school visits also require that you're free in the middle of the afternoon, which means you can get off your day job or don't need one, which is also another level. Um, Honestly, during the pandemic, I did the most school visits I ever did because I could Zoom them on my lunch hour. So it is access is hard. But I mean, as a librarian, I know how hard other librarians work to learn about these books. I know how much they listen to their kids that are in their library, about what their kids are looking for. And I also know that one of the most asked for books by kids is horror. And I know that. And I keep that in my heart when I'm writing, knowing that while I might not be able to directly share with them what I'm doing, I know that there are people on the front line who are working on my behalf for which they don't have to do, but they are to get kids the books that they want because they care about what they do and they care about the kids in their library. And I know that there are teachers who do that. And I know that there are parents who do that. And that is really the best I can do. And it's hard and it's frustrating and I wish it was different, but I don't know. I hope maybe maybe Paul and Allie have worked out some other kind of like great avenue that they can share with me that I can use. But for me, that's really the most I can do is just appeal to the people that I know believe in stories and know what their readers want and be as accessible to them as possible. And maybe one day not have to work a day job so I can go on more class visits. That's not happening anytime soon.
Well, I know Paul just slips copies of his books in the library at his school, so I think that's
The new
that's the
plan.
trick.
But he
Yeah.
Like
slips out other
steal
copies.
steal other books, put
Yeah.
his in
Put in
his
his.
place. It's like the whole book, the whole library, all the shelves are just like
Yeah.
Paul Tremblay books. It's not
I
even
mean, it's
alphabetical.
kind of a brilliant plan, actually.
Hmm.
You get something, they get something.
Yeah.
Paul, are you finding it easy to kind of reach younger readers?
No. Yeah. I mean, the answer is no. That is like the strange part of it. Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, we shouldn't be allowed to directly, market our books to kids of that age. So, uh, but it is interesting, and the librarians and the teachers that I've talked to are amazing, as always. Um, yeah, but there is sort of like, you're relying on other people to help get the word out kind of thing. In my experience this summer, I did do like a brief tour, which was a lot of fun. It was mostly my adult readers, which was great. And some of them would bring their kids, like Clay did, and that was really cool to hear from people who had read my other books. That, oh, I know I get to read a book with my niece or with my daughter or my son, which has been cool. The one event that I went to, because it came out during the summer, that was all kids and was hosted by Stanza. Um, and it was like a kids lit day, and they'd rented out like a bigger Stanzas in Beacon, New York, by the way. I know Clay's been there. I don't know if Allie and Allie have been there. Um, but the event, so they had this big, like old building full of like 8 to 10 year olds, and it was actually I was kind of terrified, which is kind of funny because I teach every day, but it was just different being in a room with all these kids sitting in the front row, and I was supposed to read, and Dan Polblocki was supposed to read, and his book was My Brother's Butt is Haunted, and I knew I had no chance. But thankfully, they let me read first because, as soon as he read, and yes, there were fart noises, he was like Pigpen from the Peanuts, but instead of dirt, it was kids all over him. And I had like maybe one or two kids that a parent said, "Hey, go talk to him, come too." So that was yeah.
Just in the corner,
One moment, yeah.
stealing books,
Stealing books,
basically.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Um, Allie R, like, are you? Actually, I'm gonna shift. I wanna ask a different question. Forgive me. Um, are you? Has there ever been an opportunity where you've actually had a chance to kind of speak to a younger reader who has read your book? Like, has there ever been any kind of like reader to writer interplay?
Yeah, I've done virtual. So Allie M and I are part of a group called Spooky Metal Gray, and we get to do virtual events. So we do get to go and in classrooms in like a virtual setting and talk to the kids. And sometimes the kids have read the book, and so they'll ask specific questions about books. So yes, in that setting, and then I have done a couple of school events. I just did my first in-person one last month. That's where I got the Terrifier question. The kids hadn't read my book yet, but like after the event, I was told checked out the library. So, um, yeah, I've encountered kids in that way. My first though, like face-to-face encounter, was at my book launch for Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave. I'm looking out at like all these people I know in the room, and then there's one kid, and they've got their pajamas on, and they're with their mom, and it's like 7 p.m. on like a Friday night, and I'm like, huh, I don't know them. Like this must be like a friend of a friend of a friend, and they were the first people to come up to the table, and the mom, the kid was very shy, but the mom was like talking for her and was like, well, she just read, It Came from the Trees because the staff at Copper Dog recommended it to her. And so she has been anxiously like awaiting, or eagerly awaiting rather, Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave. So she came out to like this event, and then the mom was like, well, what else do you want to tell her? And she goes, oh, well, you're my favorite writer. And that just like, it is so, yeah, Allie, exactly. I like wanted to
Well,
cry.
can I say when Broken Dolls came out, there was a kid at the event that Clay and I did, and he came up to the table with his mom, also didn't speak, and his mom just said, "He's so happy." He's so happy that someone's writing scary stories for him to read. And I was like, I looked him dead in the eye and I was like, I will always write stories for you, buddy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
like it happens so rarely, but when it does, it's the most amazing thing.
Really is. And I think, I used to work in publishing, so I can get really jaded about the business of publishing in general. But then when you have an encounter like that, like the reminder is right there in front of you, like, oh, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I feel like that's a good note to end on.
I'll say I
I
had
want to.
kids ask me where's Dan Pablaki? Like I say he's over here. He who is a lovely human, and his book is very funny, by the way.
I want to give you the last word, Paul. Like, did
That was it.
have there been kind of moments where you've had a chance to kind of chat with one of your younger readers?
Well, George Ranson isn't that young. No. Is that true? Man, my brain doesn't work. Not really, because I mean, when I made appearances, the book was just out, so it was more
Yeah.
like kids were getting, getting the book signed, meeting me, kind of thing. So, yeah, haven't been allowed near anyone young who's read my book yet.
Paul, you're not allowed in any libraries from here on out. Bookstores are a little bit suspect at the moment. But I do want to ask, like, are you thinking that you will write another middle grade book, or are you one and done?
I don't know. I mean, never say never, but like, I have in the middle of a 3 book adult deal, and I view myself as those are the books I'm writing first and foremost. But after I lose my teaching job because of what's going on this podcast, then maybe I will have more time to work on some middle grade books too.
You heard it here, folks. The pink slip is in the mail, guys. Paul is now a full-time writer. Um, Ali R, I know next week we have Down Came the Spiders. It's plural. We're not talking about just one spider. Like there are multiple spiders in this book, yes?
Thousands of
Oh my
spiders in this
God.
book.
Thousands. Oh dear. Take that, Shakes the Clown. What's his name? I don't even know what that
I don't
Art the Clown.
know.
Oh,
Arthur
art.
Clown.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Shakes a clown, different clown.
That's a
Yeah.
deep cut. So you're still going strong, Allie R. Like you're continuing to write within the sphere.
Um, for now. So I just finished Mystery James is a duology. So I just finished the second book in that. And then I am working on a YA project. So we'll see how that
Mm.
how that goes.
Does it feel like you're kind of like easing into like a deeper end of the pool?
Maybe, but only because, we were talking about middle grade as being a spectrum and, 8 to 12 is a big spectrum. And, what 8-year-olds are afraid of is not the same thing as what 11 and 12-year-olds are afraid of. So I'm always trying to write toward the tail end of the middle grade spectrum. So we'll see. It could end up in being a middle grade anyway, but
Allie R's getting her chainsaw. I feel it. Like she's finally gonna get the chainsaw. It's gonna be grotesque because YA you can do a lot of that stuff. Like it's pretty gnarly up there. Um, Allie M, I feel like I saw somewhere on some social media thing that said you have finished a draft of a new manuscript. Is that true?
It is true. I actually have a book out on sub right now, which is about a family of witches. And I am halfway through another book about monsters in the woods, which let me tell you, a reread of It Came from the Trees was the most inspiring. So thank you for that. Um, yeah, so that's about where we're at. We got one out on sub, we got one almost done. So,
More.
I'm brewing up an adult. Yeah,
You know,
brewing up an adult novel.
who needs them? Who needs
Forget
those
them.
adults?
I don't think I
Whatever.
will ever not write middle grade, but don't limit myself to anything. So, I
Yeah.
have an adult idea. So we'll see what happens. It could languish and die. That's always a possibility.
It's
Um,
called My Husband's Butt is Haunted.
It
That's
is
the
now.
adult, yeah.
oh my God. Don't take Dad's idea. That's a sequel. Last question for the night, and then I'm gonna let you guys go have Thanksgiving time, I swear. But I'm curious, like, is there another middle grade book that you would recommend, spooky or not? Like something that's kind of targeted for younger readers that you feel like should get its due. Allie M, I'll start with you.
I would recommend everything that Laura Semph writes or thinks about or daydreams
Yeah.
about. Everything.
Ah,
She's a wonderful person, and B, one of my favorite middle grade writers, hands down. Yeah, everything she does.
Paul T, what should we be stealing from the library?
Yeah, and one of the other fun things about this summer with another coming out was getting to meet all these writers that I had met before, was unfamiliar with. Middle grade writers. I'm talking about like Lindsay Curry, whose X Marks the Haunt I got to read, and that's coming out early 26, I think, and it's great. I met Laura Semph and Tiffany Jackson, and so it's been really cool to just have my own sort of like bookly horizon sort of broaden. Uh, One of my favorite middle grade novels, and I don't think I would have written another without having read um, Kenneth Oppel's The Nest.
Mm.
Um, and actually, it was at, I know Alex is running the show here, but it was at Westport, the Story Fest, where Mallory O'Meara was there when I was there. And she
Yeah.
said, Paul, you have to read this book. And I said, okay. And, people do that to us all the time, but she actually physically mailed me a copy of The Nest. It was like, oh, I better read it. And it was freaking amazing. I said, freaking. So yeah, that book. And like I said, Lindsay's upcoming book is great too.
Yeah. God, I love The Nest. That one still
Hmm.
terrifies me.
Hmm.
Ali R, what would you recommend?
Um, I'm gonna go back a few years. I always recommend Hannah Alkoff's The Girl and the Ghost because it's one of those Allie was talking about, stories that are like equal parts horror and heart, and that is very much one of those stories. So, and Hannah's writing across all age ranges, I think. She's got The Girl and the Ghost, and then she's got a YA, the Hysterical Girls of Saint Bernadette's, I think it's called. So I just think everything she writes is so beautiful. And then because I can't just do one, Decca Herman is like another favorite of mine. She wrote Hide and Seeker. So those are the couple that I would recommend.
Amazing. All right, for everybody who's listening and watching this, you have to know that the fate of these authors is in your hands. Like you have it, like the holidays are coming up. It's a perfect opportunity to pick up a couple of their books and give them as gifts because they make great, great, great stocking stuffers, jack-o'-lantern candles. I don't know. Like these are wonderful books, and I would make the argument that they don't have to be just for younger readers because I read them and they scared the bejesus out of me. So I can't thank you enough for spending the hour with me. It's really been awesome. I really appreciate it. Author of Another, we got Paul T. It Came from the Trees, Ally R. and Broken Dolls by Ally M. The band is Ally and the Tremblays. I thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank
Clay.
you.
Have a wonderful night, everybody. This has been Fearmongers. Paul, and Ally and the Tremblay. I don't know what the song would be.
We'll
Thanks,
we'll
guys.
workshop it. Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there.